Join me on my ceramic journey as I learn how to throw pots on a potter's wheel. Today I'm looking at trimming. The vessel I'm going to be trimming up today is a cylinder vessel that could be turned into a mug or some kind of similar object. I begin by placing the cylinder on top of the potter's wheel and using some wedges of clay, I push them down to hold the vessel in place. I then with my tool begin to scrape away at the sides and the edges. It's really important to keep your hand a fixed distance from the clay so that you are removing the high bits of clay and not deepening the lower bits of clay and creating those bigger grooves on the vessel's surface. I achieve this by bracing both hands together and trying to hold it as still as possible and let the rotation of the potter's wheel be the thing that turns and cuts into the edge of the tool I'm holding. Once I've got the sides of the vessel cleaned up, I then begin working away on the top of the vessel. What I'm trying to achieve here first is to create a nice flat surface so that when the cylinder is flipped upside down, I will then sit nice and neatly on the top of a table. Once I'm happy with the flat surface, I'll then use a smaller tool to etch away a deeper groove into the base of the vessel. As you can see here, the clay starts to spoil and curl as I begin to remove more and more away from the surface edge. I'm gently removing as little as clay as possible and incrementally taking it down deeper into the clay. I often get carried away with trimming and trim the base far too thin, and that ends up sagging and warping the bottom of the container. So once I've got a nice height, I'll move the piece out onto the edge and begin trimming up the foot of the cylinder, again so that it's nice and flat and it will rest neatly on the edge of that surface. Once I've got that nice and flat, I begin to then create the edge of the cylinder, pushing it in and slowly etching out the feet on the outside too. I'll continue to repeat this process until I'm happy with how deep the inside and how thin the wall surfaces are. I'm looking for a nice smooth texture so that everything feels really cohesive in the hand. This process can go on for a while, and often I get distracted by the little curly wormy bits that come off as I'm tripping away at the clay. So I'll continue to remove little by little, etching my way down into the clay body. Once I've got a desired height, I'll then move on to a different area and again repeat the process of removing bits of clay little by little. Now I'm trying to tidy up the edge of where the inside of the base and the foot meet so that there's a nice crisp surface. Removing as little as I can so that it's nice and flat. This process can take several minutes and shouldn't be rushed. Switching between the small detailed tools and the larger tool that will remove bigger chunks of clay. Once I'm happy with where I've got with that, I can then flip the vessel over and start working on the lip. Usually you do the lip first, but as this is my second attempt at trimming, I did the base first and we'll have to come back to this at a later date. So I'm now placing the vessel the right way up with the base face down. As you can imagine, placing a freshly trimmed base onto a dirty potter's wheel will result in me having to come back and just tidy things up a little bit later. So I'm just now bracing the vessel with my hand, trying to find the center of the wheel so that when the wheel spins, it doesn't make the mug warp or wobble. Fixing it into place with 3 pieces of clay. Here I'm pushing the clay down onto the wheel rather than against the vessel itself, and this is really important so that you don't end up warping the edge of the clay or deforming the shape in any way. As I've trimmed the side previously when the vessel was upside down, it only takes a few little light touches around the rim and a little bit of burnishing with my finger and a wet sponge to take away any of those sharp edges so that it feels really nice and smooth when it's in the mouth. When I'm happy with that, I'll remove the pieces of clay I'm using to brace the vessel, and then I'll go back and just tidy up that base a little bit more. Hopefully next time when I'm doing this, I remember to do it the right way around first so that I don't have to come back and redo any of the parts I've already trimmed down. So I've made sure that the wheel is extra clean and a little bit damp, and this will mean that when I place the mug onto the wheel itself and push down, it will stick to the wheel surface, and I don't require any of those little clay pieces to hold it in place. So again, just doing some finishing touches here, removing some of the excess clay that's kind of stuck to the bottom of the cup when I flipped it, and just giving it one last burnish to remove any of those extra pieces. You can see that there's a tiny little black speck as well that's made its way onto the clay's surface, so I'll need to make sure that when I'm removing some of that clay that I remove that dirt as well. None of these vessels will be fired, so it doesn't matter too much, but I guess it's just good practice to ensure that all my clay surfaces are consistent. As you can see now, I've removed that piece and it's time to take a look at what I've finished with. So there's a nice neat foot there, but I've noticed there's a little bit of touch-up needed. So with the wheel paused, I'm just manually now scraping away that bit there. I did try to catch it when the wheel was spinning, but the clay kept pushing the tool away. So it's best just in this case to pause and do it manually without the wheel spinning. Now just a little light touch up with the rim with my fingers, and here's the final piece.